Good day, and welcome to a story that shook the Philippines during the transition from 2020 to 2021. What should have been a joyful New Year's celebration at a luxurious hotel in Makati City turned into a tragedy that captured national and international media attention, sparking heated debates about justice, truth, and the dangers of rushing to judgment. Christin Dacera came into this world on April 13, 1997, in General Santos, Philippines. She was the second of 4 siblings in a close-knit family where her parents, John and Sharon, lovingly called her Ika. From her earliest years, Christin stood out not just for her striking beauty, but for her sharp intelligence and remarkable confidence that seemed to open every door she approached. Her academic journey took her to the University of Mindanao, where she pursued a bachelor's degree in artistic communication with a specialization in media arts, graduating in 2017. But Christin wasn't content with just academic achievements. She possessed an entrepreneurial spirit and wasn't afraid to chase her dreams, no matter how ambitious they seemed. The world of modeling and beauty pageants beckoned to her, and she answered that call with enthusiasm. In 2017, she participated in the Miss Diva contest, and her natural charisma and poise earned her recognition. 2 years later, she secured the runner-up position, proving that her beauty was matched by her determination. Her talent and striking appearance also earned her a coveted spot among the finalists of the prestigious New Horizons contest in 2019. During her university years, Christin's passion for performance led her to join the university dance team. Those who knew her described a young woman bursting with creative energy, someone who approached life with an infectious enthusiasm that drew people to her like a magnet. She had dreams that extended far beyond her small hometown, and she possessed the courage to pursue them. After graduation, Christin made the bold decision to move to Manila, the bustling capital that represented endless opportunities. There, she landed her dream job as a flight attendant with Philippine Airlines. For someone who had always dreamed of seeing the world, this career was perfect. It combined her love of travel with her natural ability to connect with people from all walks of life. Her colleagues at Philippine Airlines remembered her as the epitome of professionalism, always impeccably dressed and carrying herself with an elegance that made passengers feel at ease. But beyond her professional demeanor, it was her warm, genuine nature that truly set her apart. She had an extraordinary gift for making people feel seen and valued, whether they were fellow crew members or passengers on their first flight. Christin's social media presence reflected her joy and pride in her career. Her posts radiated happiness and showed a young woman who had found her calling. She frequently shared photos from different destinations, her smile bright against backdrops of airports and aircraft. But perhaps most touching were her posts about her family. Despite her busy schedule and the demands of her career, she never forgot where she came from or the people who supported her dreams. Her family remained her anchor. She often spoke about her ultimate goal of taking them on trips around the world, sharing the adventures that her career made possible. To her parents and siblings, she wasn't just a daughter or sister, she was their inspiration, their source of pride, living proof that dreams could come true with enough determination and hard work. December 31st, 2020 started like many other days for Christin, but it would end in tragedy that no one could have predicted. At 11 p.m., she called her mother to share her plans for welcoming the new year. Her voice was filled with excitement as she explained that she would be celebrating with friends at the City Garden Grand Hotel in Makati, a well-regarded four-star establishment known for hosting memorable events. The celebration was organized by 3 of her close friends, but as was often the case with New Year's parties, the guest list had expanded through mutual connections. Besides Christin, all the other attendees would be men, 11 in total. This might have seemed unusual to some, but for Christin, it was perfectly normal. Throughout her life, she had always found it easy to form friendships with men, perhaps because of her confident, outgoing personality that put people at ease, regardless of gender. The group had reserved 2 adjacent rooms, 2209 and 2207. The plan was ambitious. They would start their celebration by exploring some of Makati's most popular nightclubs, known throughout the Philippines for their vibrant nightlife scene, before returning to the hotel for a private party that would carry them into the new year. What made this gathering special was its open nature. It was the kind of party where friends could invite friends, creating an atmosphere of spontaneous celebration. While this meant that not everyone knew each other personally, it also created the potential for new friendships and memorable moments. Christin, with her natural social skills, was particularly excited about meeting new people and expanding her circle of friends. The evening began exactly as planned. The group ventured out into the neon-lit streets of Makati, moving from one club to another, dancing, laughing, and toasting to the year that was ending and the one about to begin. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the kind of infectious energy that comes with celebrating life's milestones with good friends. As midnight approached and then passed, the group made their way back to the hotel, their spirits high and their energy still abundant, despite the late hour and the alcohol they had consumed. The night was far from over. They had private rooms where they could continue their celebration away from the crowds and noise of the public venues. It was in this moment of pure joy that Christin made a decision that would later become one of the most poignant details of the entire story. Despite being surrounded by friends and caught up in the excitement of the celebration, she took time to call her family. Using video calling, she reached out to her parents and siblings, her face glowing with happiness as she wished them a happy new year. This call would later be remembered by her family as a precious gift, their last chance to see their beloved Ika alive, radiating the joy and vitality that had defined her throughout her short but impactful life. In that moment, surrounded by friends in a luxury hotel, with her whole future stretching out before her, no one could have imagined that tragedy was just hours away. January 1st, 2021, dawned like any other New Year's Day, but for the friends staying at the City Garden Grand Hotel, it would become a day they would never forget. Around 10 a.m., Rommel, one of Christin's 3 close friends, decided to check on her. The previous night's celebration had been intense, and he expected to find her sleeping off the effects of their New Year's revelry. What he discovered in room 2207 initially seemed like a common consequence of a night of heavy drinking. Christin was in the bathtub, completely unresponsive to his calls and attempts to wake her. Her breathing was shallow, and she appeared to be in a deep, alcohol-induced sleep that many partygoers experience after a night of celebration. Concerned but not yet alarmed, Rommel made a decision that he would later question for the rest of his life. Assuming she just needed time to sleep it off, he gently placed a pillow under her head and covered her with a blanket to keep her warm. The bathroom wasn't the most comfortable place to rest, but he didn't want to risk injuring her by trying to move her while she was unconscious. He returned to his own bed, planning to check on her again in a few hours. 2 hours passed slowly. At around noon, Rommel returned to the bathroom, expecting to find Christin awake and perhaps ready for some breakfast and strong coffee to help with what he assumed would be a severe hangover. Instead, he was confronted with a sight that would haunt him forever. Christin's appearance had changed dramatically. Her lips, which had been their natural color just hours before, now showed a disturbing purple tint. Her skin had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality with an alarming bluish discoloration that spoke of something far more serious than alcohol poisoning. Panic set in immediately. Rommel's calls for help brought the other friends running, and suddenly the hotel room was filled with chaos and desperate activity. The realization that this was not a simple case of too much alcohol hit them all at once, and their attempts at amateur resuscitation began immediately. They pulled Christin from the bathtub, her body alarmingly heavy and unresponsive. Their attempts at CPR were frantic but uncoordinated. They were young people faced with a medical emergency for which nothing in their lives had prepared them. As precious minutes ticked by, it became clear that they needed professional help immediately. Hotel staff arrived quickly after being alerted, bringing with them a wheelchair and medical supplies. However, their attempts to transport Christin were immediately complicated by a grim discovery. Rigor mortis had already begun to set in. Her body had become rigid, making it impossible to position her in the wheelchair in any normal way. Faced with this horrifying reality, the group made the difficult decision to carry Christin's body to the hotel's medical clinic. There, more organized resuscitation attempts were made, but by now it was becoming clear that they might be too late. The medical staff at the hotel worked diligently, but their efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. The decision was made to transport Christin immediately to a full medical facility, the McCarty Medical Center. Her family was notified, and her sister Anne rushed to the hospital, praying for a miracle that would not come. Despite the best efforts of the medical team, Christin Angelica Dacera was pronounced dead at 12:25 p.m. on January 1st, 2021. The death of a vibrant 23-year-old woman under such circumstances inevitably attracted the attention of law enforcement. What should have been a routine investigation into a potential alcohol-related death quickly became something much more complex and controversial. The initial police response was swift, but it was also marked by a decision that would prove to be highly controversial. Without waiting for the official autopsy results, the police chief made a stunning public announcement to local media. He claimed that preliminary examination had revealed injuries and traces of semen in Christin's intimate areas, suggesting that she had been sexually assaulted before her death. This premature disclosure ignited a media firestorm that would rage for weeks. The suggestion that 11 men had assaulted and possibly murdered a young woman struck a nerve in Philippine society, where issues of violence against women were already a subject of intense public concern. Social media platforms exploded with outrage, and the hashtag number Justice for Christin began trending as thousands of people demanded answers. Meanwhile, Christin's body was transported to a funeral home, where a formal autopsy would be conducted. The results of this examination were crucial. They would either confirm the police chief's inflammatory allegations or tell a different story entirely. When the official autopsy report was finally released, it painted a more complex picture than the initial police statements had suggested. The direct cause of death was determined to be a ruptured aortic aneurysm, a catastrophic medical event that occurs when a weakened area of the body's main artery bursts, causing massive internal bleeding. This type of medical emergency is both sudden and usually fatal without immediate surgical intervention. In Christin's case, doctors found 150 milliliters of fluid in her stomach, which they determined was a direct result of the ruptured aneurysm. The condition can strike without warning, and survival rates are low even in hospital settings with immediate medical attention. However, the autopsy also revealed details that complicated the narrative. There were multiple bruises and marks on Christin's body, on her feet, ankles, knees, thigh, and the back of her right hand. There was also what appeared to be a needle mark on her right hand, though the examiner couldn't definitively confirm what had caused it. Perhaps most significantly, the medical examiner noted the presence of a well-healed surgical incision in the genital area. This finding was crucial because it indicated that any injury in this area had occurred much earlier than the night of her death, possibly weeks or months before. The question of sexual assault remained contentious. The embalming process that had been performed on Christin's body before the family's consent had made certain types of forensic analysis more difficult. However, the official report stated that no traces of semen were found on the body, contradicting the initial police claims. One of the most valuable sources of information about the events of that night came from the hotel's extensive surveillance system. The City Garden Grand Hotel, like most establishments of its caliber, had cameras positioned throughout its corridors and common areas. These recordings provided a timeline that would prove crucial to understanding what had happened. The surveillance footage painted a picture of a group of friends enjoying themselves, but also revealed some concerning moments that required explanation. At 11:21 p.m., cameras captured Christin moving from room 2209 to room 2207, accompanied by several of her friends. The group appeared to be engaged in some kind of game involving clapping, and Christin seemed to be enjoying herself, even appearing to win whatever game they were playing. 16 minutes later, at 11:37 p.m., the cameras showed Christin returning to room 2209. This coincided with the time when she made her video call to her family, and she appeared to be in good spirits, consistent with the joy her family remembered from their final conversation with her. The early morning hours provided more crucial footage. At 2:51 a.m., Christin was seen leaving room 2209 with one of the participants, Valentine, as they headed to the adjacent room. This movement occurred shortly after room service had delivered additional alcohol to the party, suggesting that the celebration was continuing well into the morning hours. Just 1 minute later, both Christin and Valentine returned to their original room, and the surveillance captured what appeared to be an attempted romantic interaction. The footage showed Christin trying to kiss Valentine, but he appeared to hesitate and gently deflect her advance. At 3:15 a.m., a more concerning sequence began. Christin was captured walking alone toward room 2207. 6 minutes later, someone from that room went to fetch several people from room 2209. When they all returned together, the footage showed 3 of Christin's friends escorting her back to room 2209, and her condition appeared to have deteriorated significantly. In this crucial footage, Christin appeared heavily intoxicated and unable to maintain her balance without assistance. She was leaning backward and seemed on the verge of falling, requiring her friends to physically support her. At one point, she nearly did fall, and one of her friends had to catch her to prevent her from hitting the ground. The final significant surveillance footage came at 6:26 a.m., and it was the most disturbing of all. Valentine was captured carrying Christin back to room 2209, and she appeared to be completely unconscious. This was the last time the hotel's cameras recorded Christin alive. The combination of a young woman's unexplained death, the initial police statements about sexual assault, and the presence of 11 men at the party created a perfect storm of public outrage. Social media platforms became battlegrounds where people debated the case, often with more passion than facts. On January 4, 2021, the police made the decision to classify the case as murder combined with sexual assault. This decision led to the immediate arrest of 3 of the men who had been present at the party, while arrest warrants were issued for the remaining 8 participants. The public response was swift and intense. The number sign, Justice for Christin hashtag, gained tremendous momentum, with thousands of people sharing posts demanding justice for the young flight attendant. The case struck a particular chord in Philippine society, where violence against women had become an increasingly visible issue. The media coverage was extensive and often sensationalized. Headlines suggested that 11 men had assaulted and murdered Christin, and public opinion quickly solidified around the assumption that a terrible crime had been committed. The accused men were tried and convicted in the court of public opinion, long before any legal proceedings could take place. Adding fuel to the fire, a prominent senator and celebrated boxer offered a reward of $10,400 for information related to Christin's death. While this gesture was intended to encourage witnesses to come forward, it also served to reinforce the public perception that a serious crime had been committed. The 3 men who were arrested faced intense scrutiny and public condemnation. Their names and photos were widely circulated on social media, often accompanied by threats and calls for vigilante justice. The presumption of innocence, a cornerstone of any fair legal system, seemed to evaporate in the face of public emotion and media sensationalism. As the public condemnation grew louder, the accused men and their lawyers began to present their side of the story. Their account of the events differed significantly from the narrative that had taken hold in the media and public consciousness. The men consistently maintained that they had no romantic or sexual interest in Christin because they were all gay. This claim was central to their defense. They argued that there would have been no motive for sexual assault because they were not attracted to women. Gregorio, one of the participants, went so far as to state publicly that he had never had sexual relations with a woman and that his sexual orientation was well known among his friends. This explanation provided context for why Christin felt comfortable being the only woman in a group of 11 men. According to their account, she specifically chose to spend time with this particular group because she knew she could trust them and felt safe in their company. The men also offered explanations for some of the physical evidence that had raised questions. They acknowledged that Christin had been vomiting frequently during the early morning hours, which they said occurred between 3 and 7 a.m. They suggested that this could explain some of the bruises and marks on her body, as she may have fallen or struck surfaces while ill. They also revealed that they had changed Christin's clothes during the night because she had soiled them while vomiting. They insisted that this was done with her consent and knowledge, as she was conscious at the time, and that they were simply trying to help her feel more comfortable. To support their claims, they provided photographs that they said showed evidence of Christin's illness during the night. However, these explanations did little to satisfy critics who questioned why there were so many injuries on her body and why their stories seemed to contain inconsistencies. As the investigation continued, a significant problem became apparent. There was a lack of concrete evidence to support the murder and sexual assault charges that had been filed. On January 6, 2021, the prosecutor's office made the decision to release the 3 men who had been held in custody, citing insufficient evidence to continue holding them. The prosecutor's office formally requested additional evidence from the police, including DNA analysis results, toxicology reports, and histopathological studies. However, the evidence that was ultimately provided did not support the serious charges that had been filed. A crucial turning point came when the prosecutor's office stated that even if evidence of sexual assault were found, it would be necessary to prove that such an assault had directly caused Christin's death. Given that the medical evidence pointed to a ruptured aortic aneurysm as the cause of death, this connection would be extremely difficult to establish. The 3 detained men, when questioned during their custody, maintained the same explanations they had provided from the beginning. They consistently denied any involvement in harming Christin and reiterated their claims about their sexual orientation and their purely platonic relationship with her. Christin's family refused to accept the official findings and the release of the suspects. They were convinced that the investigation had been inadequate and that crucial evidence had been overlooked or mishandled. The family's first major action was to file a complaint against the forensic pathologist who had conducted the initial autopsy. They accused him of gross negligence and professional incompetence, pointing specifically to his decision to embalm the body without their consent, which they argued had compromised important evidence. Christin's mother became a vocal advocate for what she believed was the truth about her daughter's death. She consistently argued that the numerous bruises and injuries on Christin's body were clear evidence that a crime had been committed. She rejected the natural causes explanation, pointing out that her daughter was young, healthy, and had no known medical conditions that would predispose her to such a catastrophic medical event. The family also highlighted the fact that as a flight attendant, Christin underwent regular medical examinations as part of her employment requirements. They argued that any serious cardiovascular condition would have been detected during these routine health checks. Seeking support at the highest levels, the family made an appeal to the President of the Philippines, requesting intervention to ensure that justice would be served. They called for a more thorough investigation and expressed their belief that the initial inquiry had been rushed and inadequate. In response to the family's concerns and the public pressure surrounding the case, authorities decided to conduct a second, more comprehensive autopsy. The investigation was also transferred to the National Bureau of Investigation, signaling that the case was being taken seriously at the highest levels. On January 27, 2021, the results of the second autopsy were released, and they largely confirmed the findings of the first examination. The forensic pathologist who conducted this more detailed analysis concluded that Christin had died of natural causes, specifically cardiac arrest and respiratory failure resulting from the ruptured aortic aneurysm. The second autopsy provided additional crucial details about Christin's medical condition. It revealed that she had unusually high blood pressure for someone her age, and most significantly, her heart was abnormally large, weighing 500 grams compared to the normal range of 300 to 350 grams for women. The medical expert explained that the aortic aneurysm had been developing prior to the night of the New Year's celebration, which definitively ruled out any connection to the events at the hotel or to alcohol consumption that evening. This finding was crucial because it established that Christin's death was the result of a pre-existing medical condition rather than any external trauma or assault. The pathologist also addressed the question of sexual assault directly. After conducting a thorough examination, he found no evidence of semen or other biological material that would indicate sexual violence. Additionally, no damage was found to Christin's undergarments, further supporting the conclusion that no sexual assault had occurred. Perhaps most importantly, the medical expert explained that the symptoms Christin had experienced during the night, particularly the nausea and vomiting that the men had described, were entirely consistent with the early stages of aortic aneurysm rupture. These symptoms could easily be mistaken for alcohol poisoning by people without medical training. Based on these comprehensive findings, all charges against the 11 men were dropped, and any remaining legal proceedings were discontinued. The official conclusion was that Christin's death was a tragic coincidence, a rare medical emergency that occurred during what should have been a joyous celebration. The conclusion of the legal proceedings did not bring closure to this tragic story. Instead, it highlighted the lasting damage that can be caused by premature accusations and trial by social media. For the 11 men who had been accused, the experience was devastating and life-changing. Even after being officially cleared of all charges, they continued to face public suspicion and condemnation. Several of them reported losing their jobs due to the negative publicity surrounding the case. Others developed serious mental health issues, including depression and anxiety, as a result of the stress and public shaming they endured. One of the accused men was the son of a well-known singer who died during the period of the investigation. He later revealed that he had been forced to sell his mother's belongings to pay for legal expenses and basic living costs after losing his job. The stress of the situation also led to his diagnosis with depression, anxiety, and high blood pressure. Another participant lost his father to a stroke during the investigation period. In what he described as their final meaningful conversation, he had revealed his sexual orientation to his father, adding another layer of emotional trauma to an already devastating experience. The social media campaign that had seemed so righteous in seeking justice for Christin had become a source of ongoing torment for innocent men. Years later, they continued to be recognized and harassed by people who either hadn't heard about their exoneration or chose not to believe it. Some members of the public eventually acknowledged their mistakes and offered apologies for their rush to judgment. However, by that time, the damage to these men's lives and reputations had already been done, and no amount of apologies could fully repair what had been destroyed. The case of Christin Dacera serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of allowing legal processes to run their course before rendering judgment. It highlights the dangers of social media mob justice and the lasting harm that can result from premature conclusions based on incomplete information. The tragedy also raises important questions about medical awareness and the recognition of serious health conditions in young people. Christin's aortic aneurysm was a ticking time bomb that could have been detected with the right medical screening, potentially saving her life. For her family, who continue to maintain Christin's social media presence and memory, the official conclusion of natural causes remains difficult to accept. Her Instagram account has grown from nearly 90,000 followers in 2021 to almost 145,000 by 2025, with many people continuing to express sympathy and support for the family. The City Garden Grand Hotel also faced consequences, having its operating license suspended for 6 months and receiving a fine of €10,000 for violating COVID-19 restrictions that were in place at the time of the party. Ultimately, the death of Christin Dacera represents a perfect storm of tragedy, misunderstanding, and the dangerous power of social media to destroy lives based on incomplete information. It serves as a sobering reminder that in our rush to seek justice, we must be careful not to create new victims in the process. The case remains a subject of debate and reflection in the Philippines, serving as a cautionary tale about the importance of due process, the dangers of prejudgment, and the tragic reality that sometimes terrible things happen without anyone being to blame. Thank you for listening, for your comments, thumbs up, subscriptions, and all forms of support, like supporting on YouTube or buying coffees. Thank you also for listening to the end. Take care of yourselves, especially if you still have some trips ahead. Take care of your safety, and remember that haste can be a bad advisor. Better to return home safely. And now, I wish you a good day, good night, until we hear from each other.